Good evening. So, mm, so something what's been coming up for me lately is, and just something I've been moved to talk about. Um, I've had a few friends in that comment to me in recent times, or about about this, and so I thought to myself, what I would do is I would just come and do a video to feed into it, and to see what comes up. What comes up. And what I'm talking about is this idea of awakening, you know, and what it means at different times, or how it plays out, and more specifically here for me, like what I'm getting at is in line with addiction, you know. Um, and more specifically, like in line with 12-step fellowships. Uh, the particular 12-step fellowship that I have been connected with on and off throughout the years would have been Alcoholics Anonymous. And in recent years, um, I've been going back to meetings, here and there, after a long spell away, about 7 years, I'd say, and what's interesting is, as I said at the start, that other people that I know and friends and that have commented to me, and it's interesting how different people perceive perceive me, in the sense of not being at meetings and then for a long period and then being at meetings, and basically, for me, my reason for stepping away from the 12-step fellowship that I was a part of was very much in line with the pull of my own process, and of course this seemed to contradict the framework from which I was within in Alcoholics Anonymous, and so different people that I know have different. It's interesting, how differently they view that, and this is what I wanted to feel into, because it's been coming up for me, what do I mean by that? What I mean is that the pull to speak from this place about that in a more specific way has been floating in me for a while now, and this has been that has been at least in part, that impulse has been compounded by the feedback I've gotten from others, like I said, and yeah. So as I said before, as I've said a few times before, this channel for me is a wonderful way of feeling into things, and you get to share and feel deeper into things in a way that you may not necessarily have the opportunity to do in other circles, and this is what I like about this, because it's important, and Yeah, so two things I think, uh, as I said, I stepped away from meetings, you know, um, for about 7 years, and that this was not an easy period by no stretch of the imagination, and it's not something that I would necessarily recommend to anybody, you know, and certainly not to any person that's trying to recover from alcoholism or addiction or anything like that. However, it would very much be a betrayal of myself to pretend that it was not the right move for me, and yeah, yeah. So this is what I'm feeling into, and different people, as I say, that I know, and new people that I've gotten to know don't really know what to make of that, and because some of them have shared that with me, and that's okay. That's okay, Yeah, yeah. And as always, when I'm trying to feel into something, there'll be long pauses, So this sort of these types of videos d- don't make for there's not much clickbait in them, That's not what they're for. Um, but somebody might find it useful or interesting or helpful or whatever. In any case, I certainly do. And so yeah, and really, I suppose yeah. So coming back again then to this notion of awakening, and for me now, and this is mainly why I started up this channel. For me now, awakening is about being in the body. You know, it's a felt sense. It's a very physical, visceral thing of being here in the body, more fully in the body. And not out there in some transcendental space, like, and the spiritual, if you like, and the every and ordinary, every ordinary, everyday ordinary experience is one and the same. It's as bog fucking standard ordinary as you could imagine, like. and for me, for me initially, the awakening was this big sort of road to Damascus moment, as many people have experienced, and certainly it's a fairly common phenomenon, let's say, in the 12-step fellowship that I've mentioned, of which I have been a part on and off for over the years, where, you know, people call it rock bottom and different things like this. I'm not going to get into the terminology so much now, because this isn't so much about any sort of chat about the ins and outs of 12-step programs. As I say, it's more to do with my own personal journey and my own personal impulse, inclination to come here and feel into this for myself first and foremost, into this the idea that about me stepping away from meetings and then returning, some 7 years later. And so yeah, and so yeah, as I said, so when I stepped away from meetings, it was really only then that I began slowly to come down into the body, you know. you know. Now, before that, there was certainly, and going to meetings and that, and there was certainly a certain amount of newfound stability and a certain amount of manageability in my life. But for me, I wasn't able to feel into uh, uh, deep anger, deep rivers and pools of shame, and a whole other host of what I've now come to term shadow material. And what I mean by shadow material, because these terms we throw them about like it's like they're going out of style, and I find it's important for me to try to clarify what I mean by that. And I always mean something really simple. What I mean when I say shadow work is all of those parts of me that have been unmet, unprocessed, unacknowledged, unfelt. That's really what I'm talking about. And I just couldn't get to that whilst in what for me became the bubble of Alcoholics Anonymous. That of course isn't to say anything about the 12-step fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's just the way it was for me. And I knew it in the core of my being. And stepping away was a very, very difficult thing for me to do, because there was a lot of fear attached to it. But as with this process, because for me, recovery from alcoholism and any addictions really is only they're really only a part of this overarching process, which kicked in here in me some of way over 20 years ago now. And through huffing and puffing and struggling and strifing and yesing and knowing and every wrong turn imaginable. Most of that road can truly can be characterized by failure. Somehow I found my way through it to wherever I am now today, which is pretty much back where I started, but everything's different. But that's for another time. And it's so difficult, impossible the minute you open your mouth for these things not to be interpreted. Words are just so very, very limited. And, this thing is much better. It's much better expressed just through silence, you know. But we are all human beings, and there's an element of the need to communicate as well, which is part and parcel of being human. However, and so yeah, so as I say, yeah. So for me, that's what it felt like to me. I was inside this bubble, and it was it was becoming increasingly impossible for me to share with any of the others within that bubble. To get some feedback, because I was going to get the same feedback. I was being, oh, that's just your disease talking, or this is that, and yet I knew myself deep down that there was something deeper pulling me away. And I knew I had to follow it. And it's not like I did it overnight. I haggled with it for well over a year. I can't remember exactly now. And yeah, yeah, yeah. But when I did then step away, it was really only then that the darkness of my shadow began to appear. Began to come up out of the bowels inside me, really. And I only thought that I'd experienced fear. Because fear is one of the as many people would agree, I'm sure, who can relate. But certainly here in me, fear would ordinarily be one of the very most common characteristics of people in addiction and people with alcoholism, suffering from alcoholism. And so I had experienced that fear. And it was great to be able to have uh, uh, an environment like Alcoholics Anonymous to share about that and to find common purpose and to find fellowship, 100%. But the fear I'm getting at here now was later on when I stepped away, and that would never have came up if I'd have stayed inside the bubble of AA, and it was a bubble for me. It's not a bubble now, but it was a bubble then. And and huge well springs of deep seated murderous rage. I wasn't getting at it, in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I had to step away, and it started to come then. And I lived very simply, as I still do, but I lived very simply for those 6 or 7 years, and did my best to stay out of the mind and just stay at this one pointed place, just feeling into the body, learning how to come right down into the body. And that was the impulse. I might make it, perhaps I'm making it sound like I knew what I was doing. I didn't. You don't know what you're doing. That's the other characteristic of this. You know, you truly begin to see clearly, not just something you say. You just know you don't know the way, and you also know that nobody can tell you what the way is, and I wasn't going to find it any, you know, for me, for me. And so throughout that 6 or 7 years, yeah, it was fucking tough. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. Do you know? But there was plenty of space in me. There was enough to bit by bit to allow whatever wanted to be felt. Over that period. And after that, then I began to slowly go back to an odd meeting. And but everything had changed. Everything had changed. And even now, it's like I can see that I was going to the meetings looking for something that the meetings couldn't give to me. You see, and I needed to find it out for myself, and I needed to find it in myself. You see, and and I couldn't understand, why I shouldn't say I couldn't understand. It wasn't so much that couldn't. It's not about understanding, but I I I wasn't. I wasn't feeling right with this. Something in me was I have to go back to meetings, go back to meetings, go back to meetings, or I'm going to go, or I'm going to drink, or I'm going to do this. And this to me was I knew it in my core, you know. But until I stepped away, I wasn't going to be able to allow the stuff up. This was a deep seated belief, that I knew I needed to challenge in myself as part of my own process. And I don't share this at rooms really, and I don't share it with other members of Alcoholics Anonymous, because there is it's not their experience, and you can't expect, and I don't, you can't expect other people to relate to your experience if that's not their experience. That's the other beautiful thing about this. You see, expectations dropped away entirely. Over time. Mostly the need to be understood. They need to be understood. Even the need to be related to or identified with. It was all seen more and more and more and more as just more selfing, just more selfing. And I would have never have seen that. I would have never undergone that process of unbinding all of those belief structures, and you know, if I didn't had step away from Alcoholics Anonymous when I did, in the way that I did. And so in recent times, more recent times, because as I said, I've been going back to meetings, and it's good, you know. But again, the experience for me is very, very different now, you know. And you know, I find it extremely difficult to talk too much about the old story, even in a positive way, even in a way that may or possibly be uplifting, encouraging, or helpful to others. Even, you know, yeah, and so I generally don't, you know, I generally don't, and you know, you know. Um, the simple fact is that it's not my experience because of that 7 years. That, as difficult as it was, no doubt about it. You know, people talk about the dark night of the soul. You know, that's one way of looking at it, one way of framing it. You know, but that was what was one dark night of the soul. You know, I find these terms very dramatic. You know, and they don't need to be, like, you know, and but it's a way of putting it, you know, and it's a term that a lot of people um, have in common, can relate to, you know, but everybody has their own little own different interpretations of what that means as well, you know, and you know, I'm not going to get into right now what it what it means to me. It's not important, you know. Where I'm coming from is that it's the cat here is this cat, this wee kitty, landed on the doorstep on Halloween night, just past there. You couldn't make it up. A full moon, and but it's 5 or 6 weeks old. He's getting big now, tomcat, and he's been here ever since. And he's just the cutest, loveliest wee cat ever. And so there we go. And yeah, anyway, where was I? Not sure. That's the other thing, you know, about this as well. You know, you don't have to find your way back to where you were. You know, it's whatever came out of your mouth 2 minutes ago was gone, 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 gone. You know, and it matters nothing. You know, it matters nothing. You know, and yeah, yeah. So. Mm. So this is it, you know. This is it. So as I said, some friends of mine, new friends and a few old ones, acquaintances and that, and have mixed ideas and mixed feelings about that, about my stepping away and coming back to Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, and thought to myself, right, I'll go now and feel into this and make a video, because I always get clarity, you know. I always get clarity, more clarity somehow, you know. And that's what this is about, you know, this channel, Icarus Landing, you know, trying to stay landed in the body just for today. And this is again what it's about for me. This is how this, it's that simple and that ordinary, so very, very ordinary, you know. You know, awakening for me is just to be here in this body, the felt sense of being here, you know. You know, it's a very visceral thing, you know. And the stepping away from Alcoholics Anonymous, for me, you see, and I understand clear now as well, like, because of my wiring, because of me makeup, because of me conditioning, and lots and lots of different things from early childhood, why it felt like a bubble to me, you know. Others, others not so much, you know. I can't speak for others, you know. But certainly here for me, that's what it was like, you know. And I knew I needed to bust that fucking bubble, you know. And I also knew I needed to bust the bubble without misunderstanding that it was anything to do with Alcoholics Anonymous, because nothing to do with Alcoholics Anonymous. It's to do with me, you see. But I suppose for me, what is interesting as I return back, you know, and because a lot of people, you know, things change and people change, and the whole landscape of the fellowship has changed a lot in terms of people and people I used to know and everything, and that's interesting. And you know, when it's you say to yourself, I'm not going to share now about stepping away or anything, but of course, it invariably and inevitably it'll come out in some shape or form. Because how can it not? Because it's a huge part of of uh, of the journey here. You know, trying to avoid such an integral and you know uh, possibly the most important chapter in my life was those 7 years that when I stepped away from Alcoholics Anonymous, and for me the changing and transformations that took place throughout that period, as tough enough as it was, they were slow and they were silent, you know. They were not. They were not. They were not interested, and I say they because they're transpersonal. You know, they were not interested in drawing attention to themselves. You know, and 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 he's starting biting now, the cat. Boy, I'm gonna put you down now if you start that. Hmm? It's fucking sore when he gives you a hard nip, and them nails too. Hmm. So yeah, lost my train of thought now, and I'm sure some people that might watch this will see this as pure gibberish. What's he on about? And that's fine, Others, not so much, perhaps. I don't know, but one thing's for certain: it was important that I follow the inclination to come and just feel into this, And yeah. So there we go. 27 minutes. It's an interesting one, I could say an awful lot more, but it's getting late now. It's nearly time for bed. It's 11:30, and on a Saturday night, I could be thinking of an awful lot worse things to be doing on 11:30 on a Saturday night. It's the cat settling down again now. It's amazing what a wee bit of love does. Samhain. We called him Samhain. What else would you call him? Arrived Halloween night, padding at the door. I'd say his mother got knocked down in the road or something. So he's called Samhain. He's jet black. So there we go. Yeah. Anything else now? That's it, I think. Other than the fact, it's coming up here. It's really important, I think, in a very simple way to do your best to say what you mean and to mean what you say. It certainly is to me, And some days that's easy and some days it's not, depending on the environment, depending on a million and one things, But it's important. I think that the integrity of the system depends on it, And there'll always be, the you can't expect that other people will understand you or even get you, let alone agree with you. And you don't need it. It's not needed, It's not needed, and that's beautiful. So there we go. Yeah, and life keeps turning. I was out plein air painting, outdoor painting today up on the Gap of Dunlow, and I got about an hour and a half in, and it got very windy, and I got these tent poles and elastic. They're like bungee cords, but they're not as thick. And I pinned down the easel with it on 1 days, but I didn't have them with me today, so I had to come home. And anyway, I might get back out again tomorrow. I'm waffling on now, so there we go. So that's a wee bit about me and why I left Alcoholics Anonymous. Do you know? Do you know? And it wasn't easy for the first couple of years, like, but it was a genuine, authentic pull. Life was pulling me, you see, and that flies in the face. That is contradictory to what a lot of my friends at the time would have the mindset that they would have been in, understandably, you know. But I would be lying if I said it was the wrong move for me and that I regretted it, because it wasn't, you know. It was the way, and it was where I needed to go. Yeah, and it went a long way to uproot a lot of a lot of fears and anxieties and beliefs, a whole cacophony, a whole spaghetti junction of belief systems that I had in place about addiction, about recovery, about a million and one things, you know. And that's painful. It's painful when you find yourself having to let go of ideas that you were holding in place at a time when they were necessary, you know. But you get to the point where they're holding you back then, you know. It's a funny one. I can only speak for myself, you know. So yeah, and there we go, you know. And then, and everything's changed and nothing's changed at all. That's the mad paradox of it all. You know? No? What do you think, Simon? Hmm? Rightio. Maybe more about this now. This is because I haven't been putting up much videos and at all, and the pull is to come back and start attending to this YouTube channel a little bit better, you know. And so that's my intention for the coming year. And yeah, and somehow I think the break away from it as well seemed right. Okie dokie. Icarus Landing. Trying to stay landed in the body. Just for today with the cat. Cat is no problem being landed in the body. Great teachers, cats. Great teachers. They just don't give a fuck. Okie doke. Thanks for listening.